Hey, what's going on, everybody? Troy Rawlings here for SHEEN Magazine. Welcome to another exciting episode of a special SHEEN Talk Live. This is part two. You'll get a little bit of part one and an amazing article coming up. But this young lady gave me 2 hours of fire. Fire! It was amazing. Amazing interview. So she blessed me with another chance to sit down, and I have to give her props. For those of you who don't recognize her, she is the founder of Radio One, TV One, founder Urban One. I want to say CEO, but is your son the CEO right now?
My son is the CEO. I'm the founder and chairperson.
Founder and chairperson. Mm-hmm. Also, the first African American woman to have a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. Amazing. I got to give her, I always give her flowers with props. She said her grandmother said, don't worry about giving her props, give her money.
The credit. My mother said it is better if you want to give someone credit to give them cash instead of credit.
To give them cash instead of credit. But I have to say this, and I have a streamlined interview. Now, mind you, the streamlined interview is still about 45 minutes. So, but even if I had a whole month, I couldn't get everything in. Your wealth of information. I love the fact that it's Black History Month, and this woman is an amazing pioneer. Whenever you see this, it's going to be amazing. But I have to say this, because of your Quiet Storm format,
yes,
you kept me making money in high school. All the other DJs were making these mixtapes. I started making slow jam tapes because I would sit by the radio. I was from elementary school. I'd sit by the radio talking on the phone. That's when we had the cords with the phone, and we had to drag the phone wherever it went and lay by the radio and talk and sing. So I started making slow jam tapes, serious scrumping music tapes in high school. Kept me out of a lot of trouble, and it was because of the format that you started. So I'm a Tarantino a little, jump around a little bit, but I want to start off by talking about the Quiet Storm. And you said something very interesting about how it came about and why you made it. Let's talk about that. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss CATHY Hughes.
The Quiet Storm was created for students at Howard University. It was a gift from Katharine Graham to Howard University. She sold that radio station, which is the #1 most powerful signal in the nation's capital, to Howard University. It was WTOP FM. And she had given them a commercial radio station because, #1, she had to divest because the FCC was challenging the fact that she owned newspapers, magazine, radio, television. There was no internet back then. So I created it in hopes that each year the #1 radio major, the senior in the Howard University School of Communications, would be identified, and they would get to host the Quiet Storm for 1 year, that the show would be so powerful that it would not matter. It would be so popular that it would not matter that we would change each year to a different student. So that when that student graduated from the Howard University School of Communications, they would have on their resume a year's experience on a commercial radio station. One of the problems with college radio is it's not a good credential for getting jobs in the real world of media.
Right. What do you think? That's a big deal though, because TV is one thing. TV, you can tell if anchor or someone is getting older, and you used to always hear it was hard to break into TV. With radio, the voice is the voice. What do you suggest to people who may still, because now there's going into communications, you have so many platforms, but what's the difference that you see now versus then?
Well, the
or
voice
someone wanting to get into radio.
The voice may sound the same. I mean, the best example probably is Tony Bennett, who can sing beautifully, but didn't know that was Lady Gaga, and she had been singing with him for hours. And then all of a sudden said, "Oh, it's Lady Gaga." Before he was like, "Who is that?" Okay, to the producers, it was an interesting story, but his voice was great. The same thing in radio. Your voice may, in fact, get a little deeper, get a little stronger, but your voice gets wiser in radio. So its aging process does not change the tonality, does not change the delivery that much. but it changes the wisdom behind it. It's one thing to talk about Bruno Mars. It's
Right.
another thing to have experienced Bruno Mars before he had a record deal. Okay, and watch the development of Silk Sonic. And so you get wiser as you age in radio.
Yes, yes. And it would be impossible to talk to you and not talk about where you're from and the rich history and legacy. But for those who don't know, where are you originally from?
Omaha, Nebraska, birthplace of Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Bob Gibson, the greatest baseball pitcher in the history of Major League Baseball. Johnny Rogers, Heisman Trophy winner. In Omaha, we have two things. We have great restaurants. Everybody knows about Omaha Steaks, and athletes. We have great basketball, football. We have great sports in Nebraska because either you go out to dinner or you go to a sporting event. That's about it. If you grow up in Omaha, Nebraska, that hasn't changed much.
And you said something key. Well, I want to talk a little bit about, because people have asked you before, how did you decide to go into media, go into radio, to be an entrepreneur like you are? You said you came from a long legacy of entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. A long legacy that I had to fulfill. My grandfather started a school in 1909, the Piney Woods Country Life School, that's still in operation today in Piney Woods, Mississippi. My father was a CPA. We had our own Woods accounting service. My maiden name is Woods. My great-great-great-grandmother was Harriet Tubman's second in command with the Underground Railroad. She was born a slave, half a Native American, half African. She and her 11 children, she got to freedom, got as far as Iowa. She was en route to Canada, but got robbed, actually, of her money and ended up in Iowa. But we have documentation now through Ancestry.com that she was second in command to Harriet Tubman, set up Underground Railroad locations, was opening act, if you want to call it opening act, or opening speaker would be more respectful of my great-great-grandmother, for Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass stayed, at her home many times. So, and her husband, a freed African, because he had been freed before she and her 11 children, a skilled craftsman. He sold ironwork. He did the ironwork for fireplaces. So we've been in business in my family in one way or another for a very, very long time.
Amazing. And you people talk about their hardcore, start from the bottom. And I'm here. You're like, Troy, I started at the top. When you started in radio.
Yes. I started at the top as an owner. My first experience with radio was in Omaha, Nebraska, KOWH, which all these athletes that I was talking about, Bob Gibson, Bob Boozer, Johnny Rogers, a group of very highly successful Black athletes decided that we were tired of listening to Conway Twitty and Willie Nelson and the good old boys in Loretta Lynn, because back then it was called country and western, but that's all that was on the radio in Omaha, Nebraska. And so they pooled their resources and bought a radio station and changed it to a Black format, and I was an investor. So when people talk about, my ascension through the ranks of media, I said, well, it was kind of a descension because I started at the top as an owner.
And so you say it was kind of a descension, but
no, I was being facetious. It definitely was not a descension, but most people work their way up. I worked my way down to being on the air when I couldn't afford, to hire talent. I ended up becoming talent, but I actually started it as an investor. My daddy died, the $10,000 that he had left me, and the insurance, I took and invested in this radio venture. Stupidly, when I moved to Washington, D.C., I asked them to buy me out. They bought me out for the same $10,000 that I had put in. Had I held on, that $10,000 would have been worth at least a couple $100,000. But I wanted that 10,000 that I had invested, a very important lesson that I learned. And it's governed my ability to grow my company and to understand the financial underpinnings and requirements of broadcast ownership. So that very expensive, lesson that I learned in Omaha when I was an investor. But that's the reason I laugh and joke and say that I started off as an owner of a radio station and ended up being, the receptionist oftentimes when my receptionist would call in sick. Couldn't afford backup, so I had to answer the phone. People would say to me, "Why in the world are you answering your telephone?" I said, because it was ringing.
It ringing. It's one of the things I mentioned earlier about your son, Alfred Liggins, being CEO of Radio One, TV One, Urban One. And
excuse me, Urban One, can we just clear that up, because there's a lot of confusion on that. There's still a Radio One, there's still TV One. There's Reach Media, the home of Tom Joyner previously, that's now Ricky Smiley. There's One Solution. There's I1 Digital. We are 5 companies. And originally the umbrella was Radio One because it was the first. But
right.
We started having a difficult time when we went into cable, getting on schedules with buyers at advertising agencies saying, "Well, we thought you were a radio company." We were like, "Well, why do you think we over here pitching the television budget?" But we said, okay. So we did some research and came up with the title of Urban One, which is actually the umbrella. So under Urban One are my 5 companies, but Radio One is definitely still a company that runs all my radio stations, but it reports to Urban One, my corporate headquarters and umbrella.
Right. It makes total sense. Most people have umbrellas where everything is.
That's correct. That is
right.
correct.
Because we talked before, I got started with I think it was still CBS Radio when I started, and then Clear Channel bought Heaven 600. And I remember Lee Michaels had brought us in there, just, we're going to try it out, Troy. We're going to do something, Praise Cafe. And it became very successful. And I met Jim Dolan. And what you were saying is true. Most people don't know one of the #1 stations that's still in Maryland is 95.1, the country music station.
That's right.
So I was in the rotunda looking around at all these pictures, and I was like, I don't know these people. And Jim was like, well, the lowest country artist sells 2 million albums. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Thank you. Exactly. And one of my most painful experiences was when I had created The Quiet Storm with this most popular host, Melvin Lindsay, for WHUR, Howard University Radio. And we were, riding a high wave, but we couldn't get any higher than number 2, because number 1 was a country station. I'm like, how in the world in Chocolate City can the #1 freaking radio station be country? Okay, I was like, that was painful. Okay,
it was
able to upbeat them.
I had to study demographics when I started doing marketing, started doing the concerts. And when I looked at it, I was like, oh, yes, there's 5 million people at the time, 5 million people in Maryland, 3-point-something million of which were not Black.
That's right.
But our cities,
the
urban cities had the most, but we weren't moving the pendulum past us.
Correct.
So like you said, you said something about, which I love that you said that. One of the things you mentioned that you stay learning, you love new things. And when I mentioned Heaven 600, Lee Michaels, he was like, I learned a lot from Lee Michaels.
Oh, absolutely.
How to transit. Most people don't, like you have been a mainstay. And I talk about this in the article for SHEEN. You've been a mainstay so much that I realize as I'm talking to people about having an opportunity to interview Cathy Hughes, I'm like, man, the name sounds familiar. How is that? Do you like the fact that you may be wealthy, but not always famous? Like, people know your companies, but don't always know you. This far in the game, some people know you if they know the business side.
A lot of people don't have any idea. My grandfather founded Pineywood School in the deep South, Mississippi, in the woods. And I spent a lot of time under, my grandfather's wing. My grandfather said that, and to this day, if you're smart and Black in America, you stay off the radar screen. because not only do you have obstacles placed in your path, but you have jealousy, envy, and a whole host of other things from your own people. I mean, as much good as some of our big name folks do, how quickly we forget and how quickly we embrace their demise or their failure or their, fall from fame. And
Yeah.
it's very demoralizing. It's very hurtful. And oftentimes, a lot of us don't recover from that. So I'm very comfortable with being behind the scenes, as long as that does not affect my ability to call the shots.
Right. I think of somebody like Al Heyman. When I started doing concert promotion, the Budweiser Superfest was the big deal.
Oh yeah.
And to hear, even to hear his story about how it transitioned, how Budweiser came in and, said, okay, we'll fund this and we name rights. And I really admire that, even though I'm a person that's going to be, as long as God blesses me to be in front of some camera, I'm going to do it. But at the same time, being able to build in the background is an amazing piece.
And different things work for different people. I mean, it's work for you, okay? And you're going to go far, and people will know your name, they'll know your face. But with me, it worked better for me to be in the background because I was the only woman. So oftentimes there were deals done in the name of my company that I was actually doing, but could get it done because they weren't dealing with a woman. It's one of the reasons, quite frankly, I gave up smoking cigarettes. I hate to admit it, but it wasn't for health reasons. I gave up smoking cigarettes because it was just one more thing for men to be critical of me with. Because the men that I was doing business with at the time, they had all given up smoking. So here I was still smoking cigarettes. And it dawned upon me one day, why are you putting a stumbling block in your own path? These men are already looking at you with suspectful eyes. They are very suspicious of, can you deliver? Can you do what you say? And you're giving them a reason to further doubt you. Is she going to get cancer and die? Okay, or is she weak? And that's the main reason I gave up smoking cigarettes, quite frankly, was because I did not want to put any obstacle in my own path.
Amazing.
And it helped my health. That was a side benefit. I thank God.
I'm not worried about my health. I just don't want to mess up the
Okay.
meeting. Straight business. No. You had your son young, and he got a chance. You mentioned the quote. You said your son said he thought everybody worked in radio.
Because his whole life he was growing up in the radio station. He said he thought it was just a natural process of aging, that as you got older, you did different jobs, more important jobs in the radio station, but that everybody had to do an internship and a stint, a time working in radio. I said, that's not funny, Alfred, okay? But I raised him in the radio station. He was reared learning the business. So it was a little easier for him when it was time to transition. One of the things that I think Black people of privilege, an opportunity that we miss, is that we don't require our children to learn that which we do. Mm-hmm. And then oftentimes they're faced with inheriting, and it's not something they're even interested in, or even if they are interested in, even if you're going to sell it, then at least be knowledgeable enough about it to know the fair price that you should be getting for it. Right. And that was a serious blessing. Luckily, I call it the radio bug. You have it. You're a victim of the radio bug. It's a very, very, very devastating bite. Once that bug bites you, okay, no matter how far and wide you grow or go, you always have as your favorite and your base, your foundation, radio. Doesn't matter. You can be a movie star, okay, win an Academy Award. Like, what do you do? Idris Elba is a disc jockey. His favorite
Yep.
thing is radio. Okay, all right.
He loves and will never
He
stop.
loves disc jockeying. Okay, it's his favorite thing. Will never stop because that was his very first job in college. Okay, he loves radio. So that radio bug, once it bites you, it's got you for life.
And it's
And
funny,
luckily, it bit my son. It bit my son.
you have all these stars that are going back to learn how to DJ
Oh,
just to be
exactly.
able to just to be able to.
Exactly.
It's
Because
one of those things where it's a continual um you didn't initially want to go on the air.
I didn't have a choice. I went on the air again, just like I keep up cigarettes. Sometimes God says, this is where you got to go for this reason. I was doing a news talk format and I was very naive, very innocent about the cost. Did not realize it was the most costly of all formats. And my lenders, I wasn't able to service my debt. So my lender said, you got to go back to playing music. I said, I'm providing this community service. I'm doing news talk, the first 24-hour a day news talk from a Black perspective. I can't. And they facetiously said to me, well, then you need to do it yourself because you can't afford to hire anybody to do it. News talk is the most expensive radio format because you can't do it alone. You can't answer the phone, schedule the guests, do the research, screen the callers, operate the board, play the commercials, talk, and pay attention to you can't do it all. It takes a team to do news talk radio. And with music, as you well know, being an air personality, being a DJ, I mean, look at DJ Nice, how much money he makes is him and a computer. Okay, brother making millions of dollars spinning the turntable. You can do it by yourself if it's music. You cannot do it by yourself if it's information, if it's talk, if it's news. You have to have a team.
I never thought about how many people it actually takes to do one piece, and when you're doing it 24 hours or you're trying to run.
Exactly.
Like I had a chance to go. Michael Williams, the gentleman who started the Comedy Act Theater here in LA years ago, where a lot of comedians, Robin Harris used to host, and a lot of great comedians. He was interviewing.
That name, you touched me with that. One of the greatest comedians ever to have lived.
Hands down. And a young comedian named Ryan Davis just mentioned him and said he had to get his health in order because people started comparing him to Robin Harris. And he realized Robin Harris died so young because of his health. And, there's room for everybody. But when you think about Robin, the purity of a comedian like that or a voice like that, you were mentioned how your former husband, Dewey, worked with P.D. Green.
Mm-hmm.
It's some people that have such a natural sense. And Michael Williams talked about he wanted Paul Mooney to host the Comedy Act Theater. And Paul Mooney, I can't say on here what he said. I'll tell you later. But he was like, I'm not available to do it. I can't do that. That's not what I'm going to do. But you need to talk to Robin Harris. And he told him Robin Harris would be perfect. And Michael said when he saw Robin Harris, it was no doubt. He recently asked me to go with him. He said, I'm about to do Tavis Smiley's show at his radio station in in Leimert Park. Come with me. So I'm thinking, oh, you want me to tape something? He had me on the show. That was my first time meeting Tavis and being interviewed by somebody. But it's one of these experiences where you're sitting across being interviewed by a person that you want to interview. Like Tavis, Arsenio, and you guys are the reason that I went and continue to go into media. But it opened the door to something as simple as comedy. But we talked about legends like people like Robin Harris. Who are some of the people, and this is offside, I didn't ask you this before, but who are some of the people that you've had the chance to either mentor? You mentioned Melvin Lindsay. Mentor, bring about, and continue or work with throughout the years who you're pretty impressed with how their career has gone?
Oh, there's so many. And I'm afraid to even start on the list because if I miss somebody, you didn't mention me,
They're gonna have to, we're gonna do a part 3.
Yeah, right. We'll have to do a part 3, and I'll bring the whole list so that I don't miss anyone. But there have been so many that have, in fact, started out under me. Angela Stribling was a sales clerk, and it was my birthday, and I was raising heck with Dewey Hughes. I was like, "It's my birthday, okay." Yeah, and we had just finished doing our morning show together. I said, "You don't have a present for me?" So he walked down the street to Ann Taylor, and in it there was one black clerk, and he and I both always went to. We didn't care if we were buying a car, a dress, or a grocery store. We always went to the black person that and if there was not a black person, we would say to the company we were spending our money with, we're not spending any more money here until we see some black employees. So
I know that.
right, and Angela impressed him, so he comes back with Angela Stribling, an address that she had picked out for me, and he said, "I brought you something for your birthday." And I said, "What?" He introduced Angela first. I said, "Dewey, I'm not into women." Okay. I said, "Why would you bring her for my birthday?" Okay.
You're always trying to take me there, Dewey.
Yeah, Angela started, and she laughs about that to this day. He said, no, she had the gift. He said, "Oh, here's the dress." He said, "But this woman is so talented." And sure enough, she has gone on. And then we found out a few years later that she could sing, and helped her get booked at Blues Valley, and always supported her. She's an incredible. Deborah Crable, who used to do the Jet Ebony Showcase in Chicago. The list goes on. Steve Harvey, whose first radio gig was with me at the Beat in Los Angeles. Okay. Wendy Williams, who did a documentary and lied about me firing her. I did not fire Wendy Williams. And now we do a second window. We run her show on Clio Television, our second network. And she was talking about, she threw me out. That was furthest from the truth. In fact, helped her get her next job in New York. And so, there's a long list of individuals whose names you do know, that I'm that name that you don't know behind the scenes, that help start and propel their careers. Lala was she came on after Steve Harvey at the Beat in LA. Yes, Lala started with me. Lala Anthony started with me.
Yeah, I was wondering. Well, I mean, outside of knowing her, Carmelo Anthony, I wondered where she got her kind of her media thing, because you can hear it, see it when she's talking.
Radio One. And I've got a bone to pick with her. Maybe she'll see this interview, because she always says, "I got my start in radio." How about a little plug for Radio One?
Right. Because when you hear her talk, it's like, man, because you've seen.
She's an announcer. She was my middays. She was 10 to 3. And we helped her. Jerry Bledsoe. I mean, there's so many individuals who came through Radio One and are coming in the area of public radio. Kojo Namdi was like, so there's so many individuals that over the years, when you've been at it for as many decades as I have, God blesses you with, many, many, many of those individuals who, got their feet wet, as, we like to say in the industry with us, have gone on to bigger and better things.
Awesome. When did you initially connect with Tom Joyner? How did that come about?
Oh my goodness. At one time in America, 25% of all people who listen to radio listen to Tom Joyner. Okay. And so how did I connect with him? He was like, I'm listening to him I was a fan. That's how I connected with Tom Joyner. I was one of those many, I was in that 25% of all radio listeners listening to the Tom Joyner show. And always felt that Tom Joyner and I were cut from the same boat of cloth, because Tom is all about the community.
Yes.
All about the community. And that's what I tried to do during my days of being on the air, be all about the community. Whatever was needed, whatever was desired, whatever was the issue, you were going to bring the Black perspective to it. And it was the ultimate honor when Tom decided to partner with Radio One and bring Reach Media under the umbrella of Radio One.
I love it. And we talked a little bit about Lala, and I want you to discuss this again, because it's so important, especially dealing with SHEEN and the audience and for people to hear it. How important is it for you, for women in media, women in business, to support other women?
Very important. Very important. Men do it all of the time. Like I said, I love Lala. Sing her praises, talk about her all the time. And she always says, I got my start in radio. Why wouldn't you say with Radio One? Why would you not, kick it back to the sisters who are working for me now to inspire them? Because, I mean, there's a sister, Egypt. Egypt now is on HGTV.
Right.
Egypt was one of my air personalities
in
Baltimore. Okay.
She was a 92.
Yeah, exactly. Correct. She
with
was
with my cousin, who's actually with Michelle Breeze Johnson, is with BET now. But
yes,
she was
exactly.
all of them. I told you, and I have to say this because people who know my story know. 14, my parents left. There were certain entities that helped some of the people in my community stay off the streets and do their dreams. Radio One was a catalyst. When I talk about people like Michael Squirrelwide, and when I talk about Pork Chop and all these people that are doing things, and still Radio One it was so normal for people to go into Radio One and get training, and that wouldn't have been available. That was not available. I mean, you had Morgan State University's radio station, but be honest, it was a little gangster. But Radio One, a professional station, a building, who was employing people. I have friends that still work. I still have a show that I co-produce on 10:10 a.m. on Saturdays with Eartha Harris and the team. So just you doing that. We talked a little bit about the image of Black women on television and radio that's continuously being television, radio, film, however, it's continuously being perpetuated. A
negative image.
A negative image. Where do we begin now? This is helping, but where do we begin now on a larger scale to revamp the damage? I believe it's been a lot of damage done. If you can turn on TV and see a bunch of reality shows, but you can't see sit downs with Cathy Hughes, history about the international sweethearts of rhythm. There's a young lady on here that's doing some things on composers, and I sent on IG that's doing some things on composers. I sent her the information about the international sweethearts of rhythm.
Thank you.
Just to make sure. Hopefully she does something on it.
Thank you.
But amazing young lady. But what's an answer? What's something that you like?
I think you already have the answer. Would you let your daughter do any of these reality radio shows?
Hell no. Okay. There's no way to say it.
You said that you like the statement where I said that, I've been a lot of places with a lot of Black women. I've never seen any of them throw a drink on each other or snatch a weave out of anyone's head or drag each other out of a room. I've never seen that. And, I have spent a lot of years with Black women in a lot of different circumstances, but never seen that. I think it starts with parenting. I think that you have to instill a confidence and a dignity to our girls, whether it comes from the mother, the father, or both sometimes, hopefully, the grandparents. I mean, I often wonder when I look at some of this reality television, do these women have grandmamas? How do their grandmamas feel about seeing them portray themselves in this? And then we also have to realize that all dollars are not good money. That some dollars are $3 bills.
Say it one more time for the people in the cheap seats.
All dollars are not good money. Some of them are $3 bills. They're fake. They're to use you and use you up and portray you in less than who you really are. And the images that some of these women, are making what they consider, good money. Like I said, all money is not good just because you have it. But those are images that are going to stay with them forever. Those are images that their daughters are going to see and want to emulate. But it starts, I think, in the home. And if it's not the mom and the daddy, then it's the grandparents or the aunts. I mentioned this before. My favorite commercial is Regina King saying, My grandmama had the softest, smoothest skin I have ever in my life felt. And when I said, Grandma, why is your skin so soft? She said, Vaseline. Okay. That same grandmama, without me ever knowing her, ever meeting her, knows that she would say, Regina, I don't like how you looked in that, okay, that dress. Okay, you need to put some clothes on. Okay.
Right.
And so you don't have Regina King half naked anywhere you see her on television.
Right.
Because that same grandmama who told her about Vaseline told her about dignity and self-confidence and carrying yourself with class and style. For some reason, and one of the reasons, quite frankly, is because of the drug pandemic. We have grandmamas now that are 40 years old. Grandmamas used to be the elders. All right.
Right.
We now have grandmamas that are, at the club competing with their daughters and their granddaughters. Whereas before, the title of grandmother was one of that denoted seriousness. It denoted spirituality. It denoted class and integrity and a value system. When the grandmama now, because, she was doing drugs and she had a baby at 13, 14, and then that 13 or 14-year-old got to be 14, 15 and had a baby. That grandmama now, okay, is still in competition with them, hanging at the club, okay, clubs, having a good time. So that whole value system that was passed down to the younger women, I mean, I never will forget the hurt, and I didn't mean to hurt her feelings, but I had an assistant at one time many years ago, and we were at the Essence Festival in New Orleans, and she came to my room on her way to an event, and she had on Daisy Dukes is what they used to call them, but they didn't cover anything but her pubic area. And I said, where are you going? And she said, to this party. I said, not dressed like that. And it hurt her very badly because she started crying. But she also went back to her hotel room and changed her clothes. Because number one, I didn't feel it was safe for her to be walking the streets by herself. She didn't have a boyfriend at that time, although now she's happily married with family. But at that time, she didn't have a boyfriend. So she's going to be out here with shorts. And I thought that was my obligation, not as her boss, but as an older woman, to say to her, you're not properly attired to go out in the street by yourself in New Orleans, okay? A city where you can walk around drinking liquor and doing whatever, okay? That's just not proper attire. And she, the next day told me that she had cried her eyelashes off because she thought she looked so cute. And she did. She looked real cute if we were maybe having a barbecue in the backyard, okay? But not to go out in the city. It's as if grown people are scared to say anything to young people.
I was about to say, I almost got emotional when you just said that. My daughter's 10. And she's fine. She's a wonderful kid, especially from where we come. Yo, you're an angel. I just need you to pay attention to what Daddy's saying. And I'm a full-time dad. I don't, this is what I do. So I'm always around her. But even today, I did a test. I said, raise your arms up. And when she raised her arms up with the shirt she was wearing to school, I could see her stomach. I said, no, babe, you in elementary school, you gonna go play. And my 10-year-old is she come from a line of women. So at 10, it's like, you ain't got nothing else to put on. So she raised her arms up, and I said, no, babe, let's go in. And I could tell she had an attitude. I said, hey, it's not a midriff, but if you raise your arms and I can see, back, we used to have rules. They had rules for women and men. It was like, if we can see the crack of your butt.
Thank you. Exactly. Like these hot pants my assistant had on. Okay, I can see the bottom of her cheeks. I'm like, I'm not letting you go out in the street.
I was about
like
to say,
that.
okay. Covering the pubic hairs, his cheeks. She can't even tend to it.
She cried, and I felt bad about
but
making
let me tell
her
you
cry.
something about
but
that cry.
Exactly. But I bet you that she doesn't let one of her daughters ever walk out in no hot pants with the bottom of her cheeks showing. No matter how cute her little bottom is, okay? Okay, I'm saying she had a cute bottom, but not for the streets of New Orleans in the middle of the Essence Festival. Like,
you got the perfect amount of booty cleavage, but baby, you're
exactly.
representing here's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah,
And this
you
is
curve and
key.
all that, don't need no shots, but you're not going out to show it. Not okay. And so she said, well, I guess you were embarrassed because I represent you. I said, no, I was embarrassed that you were representing yourself. I said, when you walking down the street, that thug that's going to come up to you, or the woman, okay, that's going to say something to you out the way, they don't know who you work for. I said, right. I said that because you need to represent yourself. We don't do that. We're afraid now to say something to young people. Used to be, you get on the bus and, young man sitting there, you say, excuse me, young man, you need to give that lady, don't you see she's with child, that seat. Get your butt up, okay, and give that seat to a woman. We used to correct children as we went along. All of that has changed.
Look, it's something so key, and it's a big part of legacy. And I love talking to you about legacy and lineage because you represent your family's legacy and lineage. All of your ancestors applaud you continuously. You represent legacy and lineage so well in succession. What you've done for your son, what you're going to do with his family, anything beyond you. And I love you mentioned about when your son, I think, got his MBA, he turned to you and told you why he got it. And you mentioned he said he planned on taking the company public.
And I said, no, stop. We are mom and son, used to be a mom and pop, but he wanted to take it public and he didn't want to disappoint me. He wanted to outdo me. There also was another saying that Black folks live by is every generation is supposed to do better.
Do better.
And so often we have tolerated generations, our descendants doing not as well. Well, that's right. Embarrassing. In my family, okay, we're like, what? You went backwards? Okay. And in my family, we were very legacy conscious, as you so accurately described, but we felt that if we didn't do something right, we were holding all Black people back. Okay, right. It wasn't just the family. Okay, we were setting all Black people back. And we had an obligation to play it forward, to take it to a higher level. And so often, because, of whatever circumstances, whatever belief system, we've allowed our children to do less than we were able to do and accomplish. That's deplorable. That's absolutely deplorable. I mean, the reason education was so big was because our great-great-grandparents didn't have it. So all they were aspiring for was you would be the first to complete college, and then your children would all be college graduates. Or, I started this business and then you took it over and you took it to another level, not let it go out of business. Okay, or not decide, well, no, that's not what I want to do, or I'm just gonna chill. I'm gonna smoke me a joint, get me a 40. I'm just gonna and nobody's gonna put pressure, and I can live up in my mama's house and not have to pay any rent and have girls come over. And another thing that we used to practice religiously in the Black community, unless you were married, you weren't spending the night in the same bed. Now you might spend the night in the same house. Okay.
But you're gonna be sleeping next to Uncle Daddy Charlie, the brothers. They looking at you. That's
correct. Okay. We had a code of ethics. We had moral dictates that it didn't matter whether we went to church or not. Those were family dictates in the Black community.
Right.
Okay. Because the next morning, Miss Jones said, you let him stay in your house last night? Where'd he sleep? Okay.
Right.
All right.
I saw y'all walking out together this morning. The neighbors. I tell people I had I love community because my community helped raise me, my aunt, everybody like that. And it's so powerful what you're doing. You mentioned something earlier about Regina, and I'll hit one more thing and we get out of here because I know you got a booking. And you already gave me more than enough every time. But okay. Regina King.
And there's going to be a 3 you promised me.
We're going to do a part 3, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we're gonna do something on TV1.
All right. I'm not in charge of that decision, but I am an influencer, and I'm gonna go.
The original influencer. Original influencers have ownership. So you mentioned Regina. We're talking about SHEEN. Real quick shout out to Kim Chapman. the Chapman family,
Oh
Chapman
my
product,
goodness, I cannot thank
Nairobi.
her enough. I am so honored to be a cover girl at my age, boy. I'm beside myself. Okay,
But
yes.
you look amazing. And it was I was talking to Kim Chapman, and when she said, I would love to interview, I would love to have a sit down with Cathy Hughes. I was like, how do you not know Cathy Hughes? Your path seems so parallel. Her
Yes.
son is now the publisher and just the legacy. And man, Miss Hughes, I can't explain how awesome that felt. Just the fact of you've always been reachable to the community. Always been reachable to the community. But let's talk about beauty. Since we're talking about Sheen, we talk about beauty and we get out of here. And what we mentioned about Vaseline. My grandmother said the same thing when I asked her why her skin looked like Vaseline. But you have a regimen that people need to know about. What is your regimen? How do you keep your
My
beauty?
regimen is to use the same moisturizer for decades, not for years or months. I don't experiment with a lot of different things. I try to use the same. Now I do with my body, but on my face, I use one moisturizer. My granddaddy used to not believe in Vaseline because a lot of people don't realize that Vaseline is a petroleum product.
Right.
Okay. But I use the same moisturizer. And you have to moisturize internally as well as externally. You have to drink water. That's your internal moisturizer. Yep, absolutely. You have to drink water. Okay. And you have to put something on your body. You know, again, particularly in cooler climates, Black folks hate to be ashy. Because some of us, depending on how much melanin we have, we can turn gray. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And in the summertime, you don't see the ash, but it's there also because
It's
the
there.
skin is the impurities. Your skin is where all the impurities come out. Most people do not realize that. If you can see it under one of those lights that shows you at all times, dead skin is coming off our bodies. So
Right.
moisturizing internally and externally. I do change my hair now, though. That is okay. I will experiment with different styles, different products. I've been using Nairobi for years. So honored to know about Kim and the company. Love Nairobi. I don't know how I missed the fact that that's an African name. Okay, all
Right. You
right.
said the first place you went in Africa was Nairobi.
That's right. First time I ever stepped foot on African soil, it was Nairobi, Kenya. So I don't know how I missed the fact that this beautiful blue setting lotion with an African name wasn't being manufactured by Black folks. Okay. I was like, now, okay, sometimes you can't see the forest for looking at the trees. Okay. Or you can't see the trees for looking at the forest sometimes. But I think that it's very important for all people, not just, I'm glad that men now are more into skincare, more into, taking care of themselves. I think that men have always been physical, but again, like I said, a lot of times, brother come home, he's a little ashy. Okay, because okay, he went straight
Like, take
from
a shower.
the physical activity to the shower to putting on his clothes. Okay, I guess he thought God would just moisturize him.
I got the
It's just
moisture. No, brother. No, you need
yeah,
something.
but you really have to give yourself because time to take care of yourself because also if you look in the mirror and you look all disheveled and it affects your mental attitude. And
Yes.
again, old Black philosophy. Black women, you see pictures of them standing on the corner waiting on the bus. They had on gloves and they were carrying their pocketbook. Okay, they had on stockings and they had on, now they might change into a uniform right once they got to work. But when they were out in public, it's amazing to me when I see these young people with all these pants down, and you can see their crack. And when you look at pictures of our forefathers and mothers. They were so clean, and some of them couldn't
Hey,
read or write. Okay, they had on hats. They had on beautiful. It might have been the only dress that they owned or the only suit, but when they took that picture, they were perfectly groomed. All right. They didn't go out in public without looking a certain way. Now we just throw on a t-shirt and let our pants hang all down, and it doesn't matter. And it seems, unfortunately, that particularly in certain areas, the more successful we become, the worse we dress.
Yeah. And my father, I'll say this and then I'll let you boogie. You're so key with that. My father always he was an athlete throughout high school. He lettered in Southern High School in Maryland and Baltimore and did all this great stuff. But he stayed suited and booted and kept a hat on. I got to get my brim game together. But his birthday is New Year's Eve, so I start calling it Joe. And I made myself put on a suit on those days. And I was like looking at certain things when I started doing the interview show and stuff like that. I was like, Dad, you already taught me how to dress. Let me make sure I'm good straight through. And getting hosting events and everything like that. And people and mentors, oh, you look so good. You look so good. I was like, this is supposed to be my standard.
That's right.
Anywhere, even if I'm not on camera. You said something about that young lady, and I wanted you to know that she wasn't just crying because she was hurt. That some tears are good because you realize somebody cares for you. She was crying because she thought she was cute and you didn't approve. It was it was deeper than just hurt. You didn't hurt her, you checked her. And she checked herself and went back. And I thought, yeah, you're right, baby. You represent us because we had the thing. When you go out, I tell my daughter now, when you leave here, who you represent? She was like, me and
you.
Your last name is Rawlings. Shoot, you got my name for your middle name.
Are you any relation to Stephanie?
Howard Pete.
Yeah.
Howard Pete and Stephanie, yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. We used to run a joke about being cousins when we would see each other at events. Her and her brother went and we would see each other. Hey cousin. But then I ran and this tells you about lineage, and it was amazing. I was working at a barbershop in Park Heights, went over to the aquatic center over there, which most people don't even realize. In Park Heights in Baltimore, there's an aquatic center where people learn how to swim. Misnomer that people don't know how to swim. So the older folks were in there swimming during the morning, and this lady comes up, about my complexion, kind of looked like my grandmother, and she sees me write down my name about a lifeguarding class. And she says, Rawlings. She looked up, she's like, you look like Pete. And I knew she was talking about Howard Pete. And she was like, where are your people from? I was like, Cherry Hill. She was like, a little bit further back. She said, ask your people if they're from Calvert County. And I was cutting my grandmother's hair one day. And I said, oh, any of us from Calvert County? She said, we all from Calvert County. And when I did I got to go and answer us, but I did some stuff and I realized somebody dipped. Somebody dipped. And I was like, oh. Yeah, so yes.
So I want to go back to your question, how do we correct it? We correct it with the conversation that we just had. We remind each other that we need to instill a set of values. We need to go back to having a moral code of ethics. We need to return to the day, particularly now that we can afford it. Those Black folks, when you go to the Smithsonian African American Museum of History and Culture, some of those pictures are from the 1700s, and them Black folks are clean. Okay.
Clean.
Right? Okay.
They might have had hard times. They might not have been smiling. Even the babies wasn't smiling.
Right.
But
so
the
now
clothes.
that we can afford, okay, to look a certain way, why would we not want to be like peacocks and be proud and strut our stuff instead of leaving nothing to the imagination?
What more can we say? Ms. Hughes, before you get out of here, any blessings you want to give to the folks, Sheen, readers, viewers,
oh my
anybody?
Goodness. As I said earlier, I cannot tell you how elated I am to be gracing the cover of SHEEN magazine. I know that you're probably going to run this on your site. You're going to put this on social media.
It'll be everywhere. It's going to be everywhere if I have.
Okay, and so we need to give them information on where they can get a copy of the magazine.
Yes, on your new Sheen magazine is in print. It's still in print. That's something people were asking me about. Not only the website do you have Sheen magazine.com, but at your local, at some of the higher end, the nice newsstands where you would get it. That's where I got my latest Sheen magazine that I picked up personally here in Los Angeles was actually in Larchmont area. It's a beautiful like a stand, magazine stand. It's still in some of the classic neighborhoods.
That's famous. Yeah, that's famous. They carry a lot of Black publications at that. Yes, absolutely.
And it was so beautiful.
Yep. So, yes, Kim, keep on keeping on, girl. I'm so glad that God decided to let our paths cross. As Troy said, our lives are so parallel. My son now runs my company, yours running the magazine. The ancestors would be proud that we saw to it that our generation did better than our previous generation, and our generation going forward also upped the game for us. And I'm just so thankful for that. And thank you, Troy, for Green and doing part 2. And I look forward to part 3 of our interview series.
And 4.
So also plug your radio show, okay, and plug your yet to be aired but coming soon television show.
Big shout out to my tight-knit family. I have the most amazing team in Baltimore, Maryland, still holding it down for me on the East Coast. Eartha Harris and the crew, love you. Big shout out to Sheen family, Kristen, Kim, everybody over at Sheen has been at Laura Miller, thank you. And the Troy Rawlings Show, God willing, Cathy Hughes willing, team willing, it'll be on TV One coming soon. So stay tuned.
Or Cleo.
Actually,
Cleo is the most women. Cleo is short for Cleopatra. That's our women. That's our network for women. We have men on.
Cleo.
They're dealing with things that are of significance and importance to women.
98% of my audience for the past 18 years for my Sex, Love, Relationship tour have been women. So Cleo.
Sex, love, and relationships is a good point at which to say thank you.
Thank you, Miss Hughes. Love you so much. I appreciate you.
Talk to you again soon. God bless.